Welcome to the Dude Catholic Podcast. I'm your co-host Adrian, here with a couple of men who cannot stop telling bad airport jokes. Their doctor says it's an illness and it's terminal. Get it? Terminal. All right.
So bad.
It gets worse and worse every episode. It's not even funny, but it's funny. The gentlemen that I was speaking of are
Javier
and Connor Martin.
Indeed. Our scripture today comes from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 1, verse 8. But you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth.
Delicious.
So today we have an episode that we have not titled yet and shall remain untitled until it comes out. But we have Connor Martin here with us. And if you could share a little bit of who you are, where you live, where you used to work, because that has to do with why you're on the podcast, because Javier knows you. Otherwise, we'd have no chance of getting you on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about you and the ministry that you.
Certainly. Are we allowed to use the school name? I adore the school that we came from. Are we allowed to say the school names?
Well, we're saying good things about it. So last time we were talking about another series. We were talking about Catholic schools in a negative way. So
I listened to that, and that's why I asked, because I was like, the school shall rename anonymous, or
no. This is one of the good ones. So you know what? If we can even, it's not like we have that many listeners, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, because it'd be hard to tell the story because I also went to that school. So my name is Connor Martin. I grew up in Southern California, like a lot of your listeners, right? And I grew up in a broken home, dysfunction junction. But nonetheless, though, the Catholic roots are very strong in my family, especially coming from my father's side. And so even though many people in my family battle their own inner demons, whether it be like alcoholism, but a stepfather and stuff like that, with a very abusive household and stuff. But nonetheless, the Lord's grace had enabled us to just power through it, and you get by. And kids are good. They put on like a mask, and they don't really share so much at a young age, like what's going on, and you just kind of go through life. And so, but nonetheless, I was destined to go to Servite Catholic High School in Anaheim, California, the home of the Servite Friars.
Nice.
Very nice.
Credo, man. It honestly is. I can't imagine my life without the formation there, and then even going back to teach there later in my life. Getting to hang out with guys like Javier here, and honestly, they have an all-star cast of just a bunch of dudes, seriously, at all boys school. You'd expect nothing less. And so I went to school there, and everything was going as planned. I was big into sports and football and track, and which is one of the major reasons why I went there. It wasn't so much for a spiritual formation, although that was always on the docket. I was there to be a Servite football player. And everything was going to plan. My freshman year, I was like the MVP, offensive MVP, and went up to varsity even as a freshman for the playoffs, and then started as a sophomore and a junior, and everything was going well. But then after we lost in the playoffs my junior year, it was just a normal Monday. We lost on a Friday, went to school that next Monday, and one of my friends is like, "Hey, I got some marijuana here." And then my other friend was like, "Hey, I got a bong in my car." And I was like, just kind of standing there. And I was like, well, let's go, and I was not, I wasn't like a big old pothead or anything like that, but, it wasn't my first rodeo. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go with you guys. And I don't even remember like anyone smoking before, a teacher was knocking at the window. And Javier knows Servite is it's kind of like a Fort Knox, they shut those gates, and there's not barbed wire, but it's something not unlike that, Security guards patrolling and stuff. And so we're just a bunch of knuckleheads. and we get escorted to the principal's office, and we all got expelled right there. I mean, if you test dirty, I mean, that's one thing, they'll work with you. But if you break the law, I mean, it's like you kind of tied the administration's hands behind their back there. It's like, what do you want us to do? And so we all got expelled. And so one guy ended up going back to Servite to graduate on time. But for two of us, it just wasn't in the cards. It was just too difficult. They're all doing very good though now. Praise God.
Oh, wow. You're still in touch with them?
Yeah. It's more or less. I talked to one a little bit more, but
for sure.
But yeah, they're both doing very well. But for me, because I had no foundation at home. So for me to fall back on something was just like an impossibility. So there was lack of support for sure from all areas. But I gotta kind of preface this story with my father's own story of recovery, coming back to the faith. So if the day I got kicked out of Servite, you have to rewind it back 1 year. So 1 year earlier, my dad was at our Mater Dei game. You know, we have a big rivalry with Mater Dei, and it was my sophomore year, and we had lost 19-0. And when we came off the field to load up the buses, you know, it's a sad time for a Servite Friar in those moments. But my dad was drunker than a skunk at the bus waiting for us. And he was like yelling at us and like, oh, you guys are horrible and blah, blah, blah. Shoot. And like, it was just super embarrassing. You can imagine, you know, he was 3 sheets to the wind. And on his way home from the game, he ran a red light and he got pulled over and he got thrown into jail that night. And it was like there in that jail cell that he was like, okay, I gotta turn my life around. And so he quit drinking alcohol just a few days after he got out of jail. And so when I got kicked out of Servite, my dad was now 1 year sober and like doing everything, back to the sacraments, hardcore, AA meetings daily, and just doing all the right things to get his life back on track. And then when I got kicked out of Servite, I had my dad, who was literally the only sober person in my life that can make an impact and get me help. But because I didn't have like a strong identity in Jesus Christ, like I am made in the image and likeness of God. I am his child, win, lose, or draw in this life. He loves me and died for me. I didn't really believe that and understand that yet. And so my identity relied on me being a Servite football player. That's like who I was to my core. Like my deepest identity, unfortunately, was being a Servite football player. And so in one fell swoop, that was taken away. And so, as you guys know, like when your identity's on anything other than being a child of God and being his child, his a baby whom he loves, like then what happens, like if you're a good student and like now you get an F, or what happens even if you just your deepest identity is even being a father or husband, but your relationship falls apart. Like everything, the world can fall apart around you, and that's not a good thing. You know, because these things can lead you to your greatest joy, but your greatest joy can never be in those things. They have to be in God alone. And so the depression that happened immediately was so drastic because my life was, you know, literally through my own fault, my own sin was ripped out from underneath me. Wow. And so my dad, who was right there to catch me while I was falling, I didn't want anything to do with that because I was so ashamed. You know, I let my Servite community down, my brothers who I've been with for years. I let my dad down. You know, I let myself down. And so, no exaggeration, within 2 weeks getting kicked out of Servite, I was smoking meth and crack and got arrested for burglary, grand theft, and vandalism.
Wow.
And that's coming from like an all-star Trinity League football player, which, you know, which is saying something, and like to smoking meth. And so what we did, like, just to give you a little backstory on like the burglary thing, a couple of my friends and I, we tried to break into a coin-operated little laundromat. Yeah, and
genius move.
It turns out it makes a lot of noise, you know, and rip open metal on metal. And so 2 of us got arrested and 3 got away, and that led. And I had like you know drug paraphernalia on me and scales, and it just wasn't good.
Gosh.
It wasn't good. And then even in that scenario, because my dad was literally trying to get me help and like kidnap me off the streets, That led to a police altercation as well. One time where my dad was trying to snatch me off the streets, and because of that, I was actually able to convince a Superior Court judge to get a restraining order on my own father. So they listened to the drug addict 17-year-old to get a restraining order on the only person in my life that was trying to get me help.
Welcome to California.
Yeah, welcome to California. And now that Superior Court judge has actually been disbarred for other reasons, you know, and like it just a whole like, wow, you know what I mean? It's just like
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And then I remember at the expulsion hearing, which happened just a few weeks later at Servite, my dad, someone from the clergy actually served my dad the restraining order. And my dad knew it was coming. Yeah. On Servite property, my dad's like, do not serve me that restraining order, not on this holy ground. And he did. And then like, I'm not saying like, I mean, that clergy member has also gone on to his final reward. So may he rest in peace. But it's just like people that like got in the way of like, I don't know. I don't know if it ended well for a lot of people who like found themselves on the opposite side of like a father-son relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everyone who took the side that like in hindsight was the better option. Like let's support that relationship of mending and healing.
Yeah.
Like man, saw disbarment, people dying. Like it's kind of bizarre. Maybe a story for a different podcast. But
yeah.
I mean, this is a man's podcast, so it's kind of good to bring these things to light, you know, that fathers, that masculinity, you know, and proper development thereof is anything but encouraged in this society.
Yeah, it's so ugly. The deep father wounds that so many of us have. Thank God my dad is like my best friend now. And he has been since not long after this whole tragedy in my life. So anyway, so I have a restraining order on my father. And so now my dad, who can't even get a message to me through a third party, like Javier, go tell Connor that his dad's wants to, you know, get him help. You couldn't even do that without breaking a restraining order.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty strict. That's pretty strict.
Yeah. And so my dad, he was just reminiscing. So just a few months later, like 3 months later, you know, I'm smoking meth every single day and living on the streets basically. And now my dad has this restraining order on him. He's just, you know, reminiscing, going through an old football program. And it was from my sophomore year when we were playing St. John Bosco. And it was like one of my breakout games. And so I was actually starting a wide receiver. And I got pushing like workhorse duties. We had 2 senior running backs that went down with injuries. And they put me in a running back. And I had like 30 carries and 178 yards and a touchdown that got called back that would have won the game. But it was just like a valiant effort in a losing effort, you know? Sure. And my dad was kind of reminiscing, looking at this football program, like kind of like, you know, crying, going like, man, this is what we're throwing away. He's not going to graduate high school at this point. He's not going to play football senior year. But in that football program, he stumbles upon an ad dedicated to Our Lady of Fatima. And in Our Lady of Fatima, it had like the 5 First Saturday devotions, which I'm sure you guys are familiar. So on 5 First Saturdays, you go to confession, you pray the rosary, meditate upon the mysteries for 15 minutes and accompany Our Lady in her sorrows, making amends for the sins against her Immaculate Heart. Then you go receive the Eucharist. And so you do that for 5 consecutive months. And so, but underneath like the description of the 5 First Saturday devotions was a tagline. And it says, when you pray the rosary, the power of God is in your hands. And so my dad stumbles upon that ad and goes, that's exactly what I need. I need the power of God in my hands to save my son's life. And so that's late March of 2002.
That's the manliest thing I've heard.
Yeah, right. Going to Our Lady, humble with humility, but like knowing that that's like, you know, mediatrix of all grace, man. Don't get me started, man. Jesus Christ came through her. All good things come through her. You know, so my pops, him being a football dad, it was late March of 2002, which if you guys were to go back and Google that, Pope John Paul II instituted the year of the rosary during the year. So my dad hit the jackpot. Our Lady of Fatima said she was the Lady of the Rosary. My dad stumbled upon this ad during the year of the Rosary, in which Pope John Paul II initiated or instituted the luminous mysteries.
Yeah, he did.
So my dad, he goes, I'm all in. I'm all in. Late March, being a football dad, he goes, if I could do it April, May, June, July, August, maybe we can, in August, we can find my son a football field. That's what he was thinking. Granted, there's a miracle. And so he does that diligently. He's a daily rosary guy. Went to mass and did the 5 first Saturday devotions. And lo and behold, just a few days after he completed that, his first cycle, that 5-month novena, I called him up, and it was coinciding with my rock bottom. And I said, come save my life. And so this was 8 months of basically everyday drug use for me with a whole lot of meth. There was some other things in there too, like crack and that stuff. But meth was like the major one that I was into. And he had a plan. He took me up to Reno, Nevada. And we got enrolled in Reno High School in Reno, Nevada. And and where I had to jump through the hoops because my grade point average was like non-existent at that point. So we had to actually apply for like an emotional hardship case with the head of the NIAA, which is the equivalent of like the president of CIF, just so I can play football. Wow. And so I had to turn in my grades and teacher reports every single week before the football games. And it all ended up really well. We start out 2-5 in the football season. And then I worked myself into shape, and our team just started coming together as a family, all these internal issues that our team was having. But lo and behold, through a miracle of Our Lady, without a doubt, we ended up going 9-5 and winning the state championship.
No way. No.
And that's just 90 days of sobriety, doing the right things, getting back to the sacraments.
Well, public school, right? That's a public school.
Public
right?
school, yeah. In the highest division, though, in Nevada. So
wow,
it was
winning state. It's
winning state, yeah. So
you guys played Bishop Gorman or something?
They're in our division, but they got bounced out earlier in the playoffs. Thank God. So
Bishop Gorman is no joke. No joke. Yeah.
Yeah, they had like DeMarco Murray was a running back for him. Like it wasn't looking good. All roads were leading to Gorman, but no, they actually, there was a better team down south, a couple better ones that year, and they got bounced out earlier in the playoffs. But we made it all the way, and we gave all the credit to God and glory to His name. And actually, the day of the state championship game, the day before, the great big interview came out with the story of my fall from grace, coming from Servite and the tribulation between my father and I and the drugs, and how it all led to the state championship, of which we eventually won that next afternoon. So it all ended like a Cinderella story for me.
Nice.
Wow.
Now, you were a child at this point.
I was 17 years old.
You were a kid.
Yeah.
How do we go from that to where you are now?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So obviously
because we want to learn a little bit more about the missionary work that you've been doing, because getting there was, not to make a pun or not, but not to not make a pun. It was a mission.
Yeah, it was, man. It was a mission. And the reason why that story is so important, because this Marian ministry doesn't make sense if I don't kind of give you that groundwork right there.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't want to skip over the vocation too, because
but wait, there's more.
There's more.
Yeah, man, because you wind up going to the seminary, which is again bizarre.
Yeah. So obviously at that point, even to my young spiritual journey, it was very obvious to me that 1, God was real, that 2, that He loved me, that 3, Mary was a big part of the Catholic faith. And not only that, my personal relationship with Mary was, I don't know, rock solid. I knew I had a heavenly mother who loved me even in greater ways that my own mother couldn't do. And when you have that type of confidence in heaven pulling for you, like a heavenly family, you guys know, I was preaching to the choir here. It's like the sky's the limit, so. Yeah. But I have to preface this, I'm still a sinner, and I'm a chocolate mess, through and through. So heaven's so.
The club. I'm biting my tongue. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. And so as I tell these miraculous stories, know that I am a broken vessel, but it seems to be par for the course that's who God desires to use, because He gets all the credit in that case. Amen. I'm 5'6", 100 and nothing, so I don't fit I'm not a 6'4" Adonis. I don't fit the bill, for like a great athlete or anything like that.
So when did you start considering the priesthood? Like, was that your senior year? Was it after high school when you were in college?
It was right. I was during when I turned 21. So 17. So just like a young buck. I graduated high school and I had no desire to go to college. I hated school. Still, I just barely got through, by the skin of my teeth. And so a few years go by, 18, 19, just doing odd jobs, delivering pizza, but still I'm fostering a prayer life. I realized that God did something miraculous in my life. And then when I was 20 years old, my dad's 50th birthday was coming up. And I said, well, Dad, what do you want for your 50th birthday? And he's like, well, why don't you come and do my Fatima devotion with me? You start one yourself. And I was like, you got it. I was like, that's all you want? Anything for your 50th. You saved my life. And at this point, my father and I were rock solid. We're really close. And so on October 7th, which you guys know is the feast day of Our Lady of the Holy Rosary.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
In 2006, October 7th fell on a first Saturday, which is actually quite rare. The next time it would happen would be 11 years later in the year of 2017. So that's the 100-year anniversary. So I kind of hit like a Fatima jackpot myself. So I found myself in San Dimas, California at a parish called Holy Name of Mary on the feast day of Our Lady of the Holy Rosary. On her first Saturday, I did my first devotion. I started my first devotion in 2006. I was 20 years old. So I went to confession, prayed the rosary, received the Eucharist. And I came out of the confessional. It sounds like so cliche, but like a changed man. At that point, I said, God, you for sure got me. I came out of that confessional. I said, you got me on Sundays. Sundays are yours. I'm going to go to mass every Sunday. And that's it. I'm going to finish this novena. You got me. And so that's what I did. So it was October, November, December, January, February. What is it? October, November. How do I count? October, November, December, January, February. 5 months later, February 2007. I had just turned 21. It's Lent. Lent's about to start. I just finished my first cycle. By the way, my dad has done that novena 2 times a year since 2002. Wow. It's 2021. He's done it 40 times. I don't even know. You have to do the math. I'm not a math guy. Ridiculous. 2 times a year since 2002. It's out of control. Yeah.
Wow.
And so my pops, he's kind of challenged me again. He said, okay, big Catholic dude, now you're practicing Catholic, the real deal. What are you going to give up for Lent this year? I was like, I don't know. I just turned 21. I was like, I'm going to give up booze, and things like that. And my dad's like, that's all good. Him being, recovering alcoholic himself.
Yeah.
He's like, that's good. You should do that. But how about we start doing something as well? Let's put more weight on the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. I said, what do you have in mind? He's like, how about we go to mass every day and we pray the Holy Rosary every single day together? I'm like, okay, you do it with me. I'm in. And so I think it was February 21st, Ash Wednesday of 2007. We met at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Placentia, California, and we started our Lenten journey. And I never stopped going to daily mass since that day. It's 2021 now. And so that's it in a nutshell. And so that was 2007. By the time I wasn't confirmed yet, 2008 rolled around, I got confirmed. I immediately jumped into any ministry I could get into, youth ministry, confirmation, you name it. And then by 2010, I entered seminary. So it was actually at a Steubenville conference in 2008 where I publicly made it known, I feel like God's calling me to the priesthood. So I went up on
one
stage.
One of those seminary altar calls.
Yes, exactly. You've been there.
A quick explanation, because I don't know if everyone that listens knows about the Steubenville conferences.
Yeah.
And the altar call to the seminary.
Give Connor a break right now, so you can catch a breather, and maybe you can explain the Steubenville conference, Javier.
Yeah, so the Steubenville conferences are there's there's more now.
There's more now, yeah.
There's 20, but anyways, so they have them every year usually during the summer.
It's like a high school age type of conference.
Yeah, and it's for a whole weekend. It's usually at a university, and they have speakers, and it's kind of a retreat experience, and it's a huge crowd. Usually you have at least 1,000, some places even 2,000 people. it's really amazing. You have these like, frontline speakers and musicians and priests, and it is like a huge rally. It's amazing. But at the end on Sunday, they usually have this altar call where they call up anybody who has the sentiments of a vocation to the priesthood or consecrated life, or, to be a nun, to be a sister or brother, that you should come up and make it known. And all these people come down, and I remember I went down there like 3 times,
I didn't.
Yeah, you did. And I remember when I went down, you're like, oh man, I'm like making it known. Like, I was kind of feeling that, vibing with this girl, but now I went down, so I can't talk to her anymore, but yeah, so that's the thing there. But anyways, go ahead. You could
yeah. And so I did that. And then, in January 3rd, 2010, I entered seminary studying for the Diocese of Orange, where Javier is currently a teacher. And I went up to Mount Angel Seminary to work on my undergrad philosophy degree at a Benedictine monastery up there. That's where the Diocese of Orange sent, if not all at the time, all their undergrad collegiate seminarians. So if you already had another degree, you may go somewhere else. But if you were undergrad still, you went to Mount Angel Seminary.
Nice.
And so that's where I stayed for 2.5 years. And
do they still do that, Connor? Do they still send them there?
We sent a lot of guys there, but we utilize a couple other undergrad seminaries now too, though.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with the other ones we use, but we do use more.
Gotcha.
And it was such a blessing in my life, and the foundation, especially like with the monastic spirituality, and really set a framework on how, reflecting now, like how we should all have like some type of Benedictine-esque attitude in our own disciplined spirituality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to have that. And so, but nonetheless, I felt that God was calling me out of the seminary, and there was a number of external signs. My mom passed away, grandma passed away, all during my senior year in college, and of course my own prayer life. And so the goal was to step away, and then that's kind of what led me out, and from there, my life stayed the same spiritually, in a sense that it was still daily mass and daily rosary, and just trying to work hard for the kingdom. And I immediately jumped into some other ministries, and I eventually started dating who would become my later wife. But I would do like youth correctional facility ministries and leading Bible studies and stuff like that. But this is where Immaculata Ministries kind of comes into play. But maybe I should give a backstory on Beatrice, so in 2010, I entered seminary wanting to do great things for Jesus, as we all do. So
Amen.
Honestly, I'm a football guy. I'm a sports guy, as you guys are. And like, if you're not, if we're not striving for the Hall of Fame.
Not much of a sports guy. I walk my dogs. I think that's
hey, you can make that a sport too.
I stretch right now. Like a few seconds ago, I did a quick little stretch.
Javier is gilded from head to toe with Dodgers right now. So
I know. He's like, we are sponsored by the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Delicious.
Got the prayers of Tommy Lasorda coming through. And and so I wanted to be like, I want to do something great for God, like I just always felt that, it's like you felt chosen for greatness. And so when I left seminary, though, as some guys in this current podcast may know, like when you leave, a certain amount of like, man, I failed comes into your life. Like, man, I let God down, and let all these prayer
totally, man.
Down.
Totally.
Tough transition, man. I'm telling you, especially if you go back to your same hometown, your hood, your hoodie hood, and like, oh, what are you doing? When you go back to seminary, it's like, I don't know if that was in the cards for me. It's like,
it's tough. Yeah,
it's just, it's like, it's not a good transition. I would say the majority of time, it's difficult.
I when I left the seminary, I was told that by my superior that I didn't have a vocation, which was really very devastating and very heartbreaking for me. So much so that it caused me to have like a mini crisis. I started doubting God. I started questioning God, like, God, why is it you don't want me? Like, why is it you rejecting me? It was huge, man. It was like, it like started like feeding into my father wound, because here I am like giving myself to God And I feel I feel like I was being rejected by my heavenly Father. I was rejected all my life by my earthly father. Now I'm being rejected by my heavenly Father. So it was, for me, man, it was so I could definitely speak to that, brother. And it was not easy. It was not easy. And then coming back into the world, because I had been cloistered, because I was in a religious order, but anyways.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I realize that like any one of these topics would be father wounds, like my high school journey, the transition from seminary to back to a lay state, quote unquote. Like these are all like their own podcasts.
Right.
But so I entered seminary in 2010, and so I want to now share a little bit of backstory about Immaculata Ministries, which is the ministry that I helped co-found with a couple people, Steve Tatro. And also Beatrice Agulamuga, who lives in Kenya, Africa.
But meanwhile, in Whittier, California, I have to go do my laundry, so I'll see you guys next week, okay? All right, bye-bye now. Fabric softener. What you know about that Suavitel?